Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. Okay, episode 102. Crazy.
Wow.
We're on the other side, already making preparation for episode 200.
Crazy.
So what we thought we'd do today is actually this episode will be about Matt Hufnagel today. I'll do one of the following weeks to come when we don't have a guest, because we love having the guests on first. But, a lot's happened since episode 1, Matt, in your life. Lots happened in my life since episode 1. And I think that's the important part. We always talk about in this podcast, we just love having conversations with people, and we could use cliches like iron sharpens iron, or you start acting like the people you hang out with and have discussions with. And that was why we talked on the phone a lot. I know I'm a much better person from it. And your story, when you tell your story in the next 35 minutes, I'm not telling you what to say, but maybe make a few comparisons or perspectives based on what you were doing at the time of episode 1 to episode now even.
Yeah. I guess a lot has happened. A lot happened since. A lot has happened before that, for sure. Which I guess is the story. And we all have our own story, right? But we were having dinner the other night, and with Mike, and I got into my story, and that was kind of the impetus of it, I guess, of doing it here. But Paul, you were just saying about us having conversations and such. The conversation we had the previous 6 minutes or 7 minutes prior to hitting the record button was an interesting conversation as well, right? On something you got going on and how that works and all the nuance and things behind that. And I don't think a lot of people have those conversations either. I just sometimes it'd be neat if we all had cameras on us, right? But to record some of that stuff and because I think there's so much to learn from some of those other things and but I don't want cameras on us all the time either, Paul.
No, and one of the things we are going to do, and I forgot to do it today I wish I had a real reason. We're going to put more of those pre and post conversations on the subscriber side of things. To start, that was one of our big goals for the next 100 episodes, and now we're 2 in, and I haven't done it yet. So I got to get better.
No, that'd be cool. I think because there's so much unique content. Heck, we might even swear in those. So,
yeah, absolutely. So start us off. Go back.
Yeah, I don't think much about it because I just it blurts out in the moments of my story, and I will admit that a lot of people find it interesting, although it's just my life, so I don't really think about it much. You know what I mean, or find it any more interesting than probably anybody finds their life interesting. But I guess if I were to start somewhere, it would really be when I was 24, and I'm 48 now, so it's half my life ago. When I had my open heart surgery, I had to have some, I was born with a heart condition, and by all means, Paul, stop me anywhere. And this is a conversation. This isn't storytelling time.
Right.
Although I think at dinner the other day probably went a good 15 minutes without anybody else talking and me taking a breath. But that was a life-changing time for me. I was married at that time. I had my older daughter on the way. She was going to be born in about 6 or 7 months after that, 7, 8 months after that. I was young. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I thought I knew a lot of things. that looking back on it now, I didn't know anything. And I would imagine, Paul, in 24 more years, I'll look back on today and realize I didn't know anything today either, you know? And I hope so, frankly, because I'm never interested in feeling like I'm there and I know everything. That'll be it's a sad time in any person's life where they think, okay, I got it now. That's not true. So anyway, I'm 24 and have to have some open heart surgery. And that just changed my viewpoint, Paul. It's changed my perspective. It was like a perspective shift in my life. I just realized in that moment, um, leading up to that surgery, which by the way was not an emergency. It was something I was born with. I wasn't sure if I were ever going to have surgery, and then in a quick time frame, it did shift to we need to take care of this for a long term lifestyle. You know, I don't want to mislead anybody. Think it was some sort of like, oh my God, rush him to the hospital. It wasn't like that. People have those, and those are much more serious than what I had. But it still made me look at the world in my life so differently. And the biggest thing that made me realize is I've this is it. Like I've got this one life. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in the day to day and you know, kind of thinking you're going to live forever. And the younger you are, the probably more that exists and that's out there. It's easy to understand why. But that moment made me shift and think, holy cow, I got one shot. I'm gonna be gone someday. And then where I go from there, you know, I have my beliefs, but I can't prove any of them. Nobody knows. And it was terrifying to me. It was absolutely terrifying to me. And I just kind of realized I gotta be the best person I can be. I gotta do the most I can do. I gotta decide who I am and what I really want. And so um that just started that. And it took me years, decades to even get to a point where I was probably in my late 30s to 40 where I ever realized like who I am. And I might not even know who that is today. I think I do, but that might change too. I don't know. But so I quickly realized that I wanted to become the best I could be at the career I chose, which then was sports management and arena management, which is what I was doing at the time. So I was got into minor league sports. I was already in it, but then I decided, okay, I got to be the best I can be. Like I'm just not okay with coasting along here and playing the old what's meant to be is meant to be. And you know, and the whole, you know, the whole just let the world just happen. And you just kind of, you know, I always say like you're either on the wave or you are the wave, you know. And like I wanted to be the wave. The wave's in control. The wave's where the power comes from. The wave determines direction. Most people are just in the wave, Paul, as you
You,
know, right?
yeah. Do you think, I mean, speaking of the wave, I I believe that, yeah, when people say meant to be, I think it's just an excuse for not taking control. But that being said, there are certain meetups with people or situations that probably can push you up to a bigger wave or keep you from falling off the wave. But at the end of the day, it's still all done by action.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, Paul, I agree. There are just lucky breaks, and there are just
Right.
things that happen. But you know what? They don't happen inside my house. They don't happen at my video game controller. They don't, you know what I mean? They don't
Right.
happen between 9 to 5 in your cubicle. They happen out there in other manners. I mean, I'm not saying they can't.
Right.
There's a million anecdotal stories that people could say, well, my uncle Matt, you know, he got hit by a car, you know, crossing the street, and it was, you know, somebody who gave him a job, and that's how it started. Fair enough. Fair enough. If that's the game you want to play, if that's what you think's gonna do it, then you go right ahead. You go right ahead and take that attitude and don't do any, you know, don't read and don't pursue and don't take action and don't take a chance and don't get uncomfortable. Just do what feels good in the moment and you do your way and I'll do my way. And let's see. I bet you 99.9% which one's going to win? It's going to be action.
Well, and again, I'm asking this because I've watched the last 10 years how your journey's how everything's compounded from all your early effort, more so than you probably, I don't want to say couldn't predict. I mean, that's up to you
No,
and
it's
what you're
true.
doing.
It's true. No.
But you were in the sports entertainment business. You could have had a good life. You're not knocking that.
No,
And
no,
but if
not at
you
all.
didn't take the chances to be where you are today, you could have always went back to that life and job too. So like, what's the risk really, except
Yeah,
the unknown?
right. That's true. I agree. What ultimately happened, because I really love that industry and it was a lot of fun. Still involved in a couple different ways to this day. But what happened though is in that industry, especially when I was running facilities, I'd work with a lot of shows. We all would, and I was always in the sales and marketing end of things. That's what I always loved, and that meant marketing, selling, working with the promoters and those kinds of people. And I, I, and Paul, this, this shouldn't go unnoticed. I did a ton of interviews back then, a ton of media stuff. And that gave me a level of confidence in myself, my ability to present myself and sell myself in an idea and a claim and those kinds of things. That was lucky, right? I go into luck. Like I got those opportunities. Now it was because I took action and I got my degrees, and I got my bachelor's degrees in sports management. And then I went to then I worked while going part time to school to get my master's degree. I wasn't sitting on my laurels by any means, and I went through a divorce, and I'm a single father, and I don't mean a single father like the mother wasn't around. My daughter's mother is a wonderful person. Still very close with her, and she was parenting. We weren't parenting together, so there were times where here I'm working a job or I'm in a career where it is it's 60 hours a week, no doubt, all the time. The mantra in that business that I always said was, we work when other people work and we work when other people play. We work the business
Yeah.
hours, and then it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday when everyone wants to go to a hockey game or the Harlem Globetrotters or a John Mellencamp concert or whatever. And guess who's working those days? We are in that business. That's what we signed up for. It's not a complaint, it's what it was. And then Monday morning rolls around and you're back to work because that's the job. And that taught me a tremendous amount of discipline, though, and it also taught me that how to outwork everyone. A couple things that I had going for me in my life. Number one was how I was brought up by my wonderful parents, and the second one was I was taught to outwork everyone because I was never going to be the smartest person in the room, unless I'm in this room with you, Paul. But I was
Absolutely. I tell the
no,
same thing to my students. I'm never the smartest person in the
never.
room, even when they're there. But yeah,
Yeah, right. Especially no kidding. You got smart kids. But but it was like, okay, then I can outwork everyone. And that was a great lesson for me. So I love that industry, but it also exposed me to, Paul, a different side of life that was these promoters would put on these shows and these concerts or events or whatever they were. And I'm settled. It's what's called settling up with them at the end of the event. And I'm doing me and my team, we're doing a lot of the work. That's just part of the industry, the marketing and a lot of important components of it. And when I'm writing these people checks and dollar amounts that I couldn't possibly imagine having, I'm just living paycheck to paycheck mostly, putting a little money away. Paul, I didn't even have a retirement account at that point. I didn't own a home at this point in my life. I didn't have, I didn't, I was in the negative net worth. I had student debt, credit card debt, and no income producing assets, you know, and, and at that point in my life, or at a point in my life, I realized I can be more, I can do more. This whole idea of I'm going to be the best I can be doesn't just mean working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And when I was in minor league baseball, Paul, I put in 105 hours one week. I put in 80 all the time during the season. Like, I get from people all the time, well, I work 40 hours. And I'm always like, who cares? Big deal. Big deal. Like, what does that mean? That's some arbitrary number invented by, that society says is full time. And I'm not saying do it or don't do it. I'm just saying work 40 hours, fine. There's someone out there working 80 and they're kicking your butt. They're not just doubling you, they're quadrupling you. They're so much farther ahead of you. It's not equal. It's not like if I work 40 and you work 80, Paul, you're gonna be twice as productive. I've seen studies, you're going to be 10 times as productive. It comes at a sacrifice. And my daughter used to live at the arenas with me, and I'd have her at the shows and events. We had to create another way in order to create our own bond and have our own father-daughter relationship, and we did all that. And the proof's in the pudding. If you ever speak to my daughter and you know her well,
Yep.
what how that impacted her life. So I'm very proud of that. But I was working my butt off, loving it too, by the way. But it came with trade-offs, right? I didn't have long-term relationships with anyone other than my daughter, and even my family, who I adore. We weren't close. I mean, we were close on Christmas and on weekends during the summer when we had time off, but we weren't close. I mean, we drifted apart quite a bit, in ways that I really missed. So I had to give up some things. So back to what I was getting at, I see these promoters, and a I did business with a gentleman whose name's Joe, at one of the facilities, and Joe approached me, um, and said to me, well, that actually happened after what I realized, that I had to build some wealth, Paul, for our future. I wasn't doing it. I was working all the time, and I was a salaried employee. I wasn't making anything that would would make anyone, jealous. But I was getting by and I was enjoying life. But then I was like, I could feel the clock ticking. I could just know, well, I'm 30 now. I'm 31. I'm whatever. And I realized I had to build some wealth, and I started reading like crazy, mostly real estate books. And by reading, I quickly learned that all these people we admire, and we think they're special, they're not, and they'd be the first ones to say it in their books. They just made different decisions than the rest of us were making, and certainly what I was making. And it dawned on me, if these people can do it, I believed I could. And so I had to start changing my life, because I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. And I was living in a crappy apartment. Could If I got a utility bill that was over what the budget, I was in trouble. I was So I canceled now I got to put some money together, Paul, to start buying income producing assets. That was my goal. I wanted to buy an apartment house, and I canceled my cable TV. I turned my heat down to 58 during the winter. I'd wear sweatshirts. My daughter would be with me. I'd say, bring as many sweatshirts as you can. Put on warm socks. Worth covering you with a blanket. There's no TV in this house. We have books. We would go to the library. We could get DVDs back then of movies and those kinds of things. We'd borrow stuff from her mother, from my parents, to watch on a DVD or something like that. We never went out to eat. We ate fried bologna, with white bread, yellow mustard, and plain potato chips, and milk and water, as a general rule for dinners. We just went bare bones, because, Paul, I had two choices. Had to make more money or cut my expenses in order to bring some money in so I could invest. Right? I had no other options, and I didn't have any other opportunities to really make money, that I thought were that reasonable for me at the time. Although I was wrong, there were many of opportunities. I just refused to see them in the moment. Um, but so I started just putting every dollar away I could, and it took, I don't know, a couple of years, and I got $1,200 together, and I was able to buy a rental property that was listed for $36,000. It was a 4-unit rental, a property that just sold about 6 months ago, and it was an income producing asset, but I needed $3,600 at the time, because you could put 10% down at the time. I'm going back about 17 years now, and I got one of my brothers and my father to participate, kicking $1,200 each. Believing in my dream was how it was. They were both doing just fine. They weren't living like I was, Paul. and and we bought that asset, and we we rented it out fully. We got some we put our money back into it to improve it where it needed improvement. And after about 2 more years, we were able to go to the bank, have it appraised. It appraised for much higher than that 36,000. So we had all this equity into it. It was cash flowing. So we're putting that money away. And we were able to grab like 80 grand, I think, out of it in equity. And as I always say to your students or anyone will listen, what did I do or what did we do with that 80 grand? Did we go buy a boat? Did we go on vacation? Did we upgrade the kitchen? Did we get the new swimming pool? Did I get fancy clothes or a new car? Of course not. Of course not. I turned that and bought 2 more apartment houses. And that became the journey in that time. So and then, it wasn't long before we had a dozen, 13, 14 properties with dozens of units and a business that was, had that was worth in the millions of dollars after a period of time if you just keep doing that same thing. And so that was kind of the beginning.
Question on that, because I know where you're going next. A lot of people won't buy those properties because they don't save for the money down. Then they
Yeah.
say, well, they don't know how to fix things. But I know you probably weren't fixing things in those units.
Nothing.
So it just becomes a formula of making more money every month than you're putting into it. And the rest is history, right? So whether you're making repairs yourself or paying someone else or who's, it's just the formula.
It's just math, and I know people get nervous about it and scared about it. I was at the time too, and I wasn't that nervous or scared because I'd read so much, Paul. I would go into again. I was broke. I was really broke at the time, and I would go into Barnes and Noble and I would read every book on real estate and investing I could find. I never bought one of them. I would go in there. I'm not really proud of that, to be honest with you. I feel bad as a business owner. Although I buy tons of books from Barnes and Noble now, so hopefully I'm making up for my what would you call it, literary theft. But I was reading everything I could, so I didn't feel like I hadn't done it, so I knew I was
Right.
could miss something, but I feel like I knew.
Good for you. Most people will keep reading about it.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Or read one book on it and then put it away and go, well, I can't do that, or
Right.
or whatever the case may be, and not continue to keep grinding at it. So
So you went while you were doing this, you still had your 9 to 5 sports entertainment job, or were
yeah, well, I was going. I think then I still had a job. Um, and then I started looking, Paul, for other ways to make more income.
right? That's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
So you had a job, you
I had a
started
job. I
one
started the real
passive
estate
stream.
business.
What's the next?
There's 2 more things to come. One was
Right.
I started doing shows because a gentleman, my partner with shows, his name is Joe. He approached me and said he's about 20 years older than I am. And he said, Matt, I want to do Joe's super successful in this business. I think you'd be a great partner to work with. Why don't we do these shows together? And I said, Joe, I'd love to. That sounds awesome. It's like a dream come true. It was a dream for me, Paul. To be a promoter was like a dream. It was the holy grail. And he said, great, let's do it. And I said, Joe, I got to be honest with you. I don't have any money. And he said, don't worry, we won't lose any. I said, Joe, that's great coming from a guy like you. I've seen your house, seen the movie theater in your house. Like we're not playing the same game here, buddy. We are two way different people financially. And he goes, look, Matt, if we lose any money, I will cover it for you until you can pay me back because we are going to make money together. And he wasn't saying, I'll give it to you. And I've always admired him for that, Paul.
Right.
He said, you can pay me back, but we're going to do it. And he gave me the confidence to go for it. And that's how I started doing these shows. And we only did a couple the first year. And we made like $500, Paul, but that may have been $5 million to me. I was so excited. I was actually making money providing value in other ways, not trading my time for it. Now I was trading a skill for it, right? And that to me was so exciting. It changed my life. It got me much more excited. So, and Joe and I've been in business together 17 years now, and we've done hundreds of shows together all over the country, and we're doing shows now, and he's been a great mentor for so many reasons for me, but he got me going on that. But now all of a sudden, Paul, I got another income producing a revenue stream. And the other thing I did, Paul, because I needed to finance buying more properties if I could quicker and shows. Well, I had a master's degree, and I heard about people who would teach online and make money that way. So I bought a book, and I bought another book, and I learned how to create resumes and how to get into that online teaching area so that I could teach for schools online. And Paul, I was making it I think at the top $35,000 a year, and I did it. I was doing that for years. When you don't have any money and you're just trying to build and invest, and you can make an extra $35,000 a year without working that hard, you're doing it from your computer and those kinds of things. That was life changing for me as well. Then I could use that money as seed money for these promotions and in these, because I needed money, upfront money for those kinds of things. So I didn't look, I wasn't going, well, let me put in my 40 hours and then I'll do, then if that's not enough, well, life's not fair. I guess it's just not meant to be. I'm doing all these things, Paul, at the same time. Then I'm going back to school to get my PhD because for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. I really did. It was this whole, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, like I got to prove I can do a variety of things, and I only got my one shot here in life, and I'm going to prove it to myself. A couple of years into it, because it took me over 6 years to finish. I kind of regretted it at many times because of the time it took and the effort it took. And I'm thinking I'm borrowing money to do this, by the way. I'm borrowing six figures to earn this degree. I could be earning way more money doing it, but I didn't quit because I'm not a quitter and I just kept going. But I'm going to school full time. I'm working full time. I'm consulting. I'm teaching at one time for 5 different universities online, building my real estate. I got my promotions business going. And I have the most important thing in the world to me, which is my daughter. When people come to me, Paul, with the I don't have time thing, I think back to that moment. And that wasn't a week. That was years, Paul. That was years of doing that. That was years to getting up at the crack of dawn and literally working until exhaustion. That was no vacations, none, zero, none. That was no parties and going out. I mean, I had friends still, and I would see friends and those kinds of things. But I have real trouble when I hear from people. Well, you just don't understand, Matt, how busy my life is. Because that and I don't know if I'm missing anything, but those things were all going on at one time for years, and so I don't have a lot of sympathy for the you don't understand. Now, terrible things happen in people's lives. I don't want to sound like I'm an ogre here, but you think I didn't have terrible things happen to me in my life during that period of time as well? Bad things would happen to me as well. I just kept pushing and going. But I could see it, Paul, building. I could see the momentum. I would track my bank account every morning. First thing I would do when I woke up, go to online, check my bank account. Oh, look, I got paid from this university. There's some more money in there. Oh, we had a show. I would check ticket sales. Look, we're making money. I'm this close from buying another property and building that well. There's all these triggers that kept me going, kept me pounding forward. So that was what I was doing next.
So now let's get into the last source of income, which has become quite a big source of income. And what made you want to do this? So you had your job at some point. I know you're giving that up, but you have the shows and the real estate, and now you're going to get into, well, I'll just say it, franchising. What made you decide?
Well, I'll tell you what made me decide. The first thing that we're missing is I built up a pretty significant amount of money to me at the time And all through all this work and all this sacrifice and all this knowledge I gained from it. And again, when you work twice as much as people, you don't, you can blow by them so fast in terms of what their experience and knowledge. I met a guy, um, a local guy, is a real estate guy, and he's about our age, Paul, and he owns tons of places, super successful. I may have said this on the podcast before, but I said to him one time, he and I had lunch, and we were driving and to lunch, and I said, it's crazy, man. People, we're the same age as so many people, but like I look at a guy like you, and you're so much farther ahead. Why do you think that is? He goes, I know exactly why it is. I go, well, tell me, because I've been wondering for a long time. He goes, how many hours do you work a week? I said, easy 60, easy. He goes, me too, easy. He goes, when you're working 60, let's say, and everyone else is working 40, he goes, I bet your 60 is actual work too. I bet like you're producing, you are grinding. When you work 60, you don't stand around for 2 hours at the water cooler or play Minesweeper or those kinds of things when the boss isn't looking. You're working because you've got to get where you want to go. He goes, I bet you most people work 40 are actually producing for 20. He goes, they're not actually doing things for the other 20 hours. Not everyone, of course, but he's making some generalizations. And he goes, we've worked 2-3 times as much as everyone else our age, or as most people. Most people. He goes, of course I'm way ahead. I've outworked him not for a year. He would say, I've been doing this 25 years at the time, or whatever it might be. He was in his late 40s, I think, at the time. 25, 27 years. He goes, I got the experience of a 75-year-old versus a four. Of course I'm farther ahead. Of course I know so much more. And I think he was right. So anyway, well, I built up this chest of money, war chest, I called it. And I wanted to get out of the rat race as best I can. That was another one of the books. Robert Kiyosaki, I want out of the rat race, right? I don't want a boss. I want my financial freedom. I want my freedom. And you've heard me say it a million times. That's all I've ever wanted. I realized I didn't know it early, but that's what I realized I really wanted was freedom. And the only way to do that was build up income producing assets, Paul, that'll make you money every week, every month, every day, whatever, without you having to manage them all the time. You can build systems. So that's what I was trying to do. So I took every penny I had and I invested in a business and some real estate with 3 other guys. Every penny. And then within 11 months, I lost it all. It was all gone. All gone. Every single penny. Nobody had done anything wrong. It's not like anyone stole it. We had a bad business. It didn't work. And it was that was it. It was gone. It was over. Then the question becomes, Paul, what do you do, right? What do I do at this point? Well, I talked to my father, and I knew what I was going to do, but talking to my father was always a big, the big thing for me. I wish he was still around to talk to.
Amen.
Yeah, I talk to him still. He just doesn't answer now like he used to. And he said, Matt, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. He goes, are you going to sit around and cry about it? He goes, take a day, take a week. It's okay to cry about it. The question is, what are you going to do next? I go, I get. He goes, you don't guess anything. You're going to go back to work. You're going to do what you've been doing to build this. And you learn from it, Matt. You're going to learn from it and you're going to move on. And you're going to be better for it. And that was a really hard thing to see in that moment. And I do laugh about it because it was such a great lesson, Paul. When I say I'm glad it happened, I am glad it happened. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. If that hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be where I am today. It was such a great lesson. And was it painful? God, it was painful. But it just woke me up to you get to a point you think you're on top, you think you know everything, and I'm still in danger of that. I think we're all in danger of that. And, my older daughter is good at bringing me down in that way. And I love her for it. But so I lost it all, Paul, and I started all over again. and then I made money, and I realized I think the best place for me to go is into franchising. And I looked at a bunch. Some I could afford, some I couldn't. I didn't have the net worth or the cash available for some, like a McDonald's. Some I just didn't believe in. I didn't believe I wanted to be a McDonald's franchisee, even if I could be, because I'm one of those people. I can sell anything. I believe I can sell. I'm a good salesperson, but only if I believe in it. I have to believe in what I'm selling, and I'm not. McDonald's does a great job. They got a great business model, and they got a great brand. But I looked at other things, and it didn't make sense for me and my wife. My wife is my business partner. She's my partner first, my business partner second. And Subway made sense for a variety of reasons for us. And we got involved in the first one. And I wanted to make a certain amount of money. And I made twice that. And I thought, oh my God, what am I missing? And then I bought a second one, and that one was even better, frankly. And we were buying them from the same sellers who were in their I think their 70s at the time. They were ready to get out. They kind of built their life and done a great job, and they had a third one, and I remember saying to them, I want to buy your third one as soon as I can, because I'm like, I got this thing figured out. And they said, it's going to be a couple of years. And I said, well, I'm here when you're ready. About 3 months later, something bad must have happened in the business. I don't know. Maybe one of them had to work one night or something they didn't want to. And he called me and said, Matt, I'm ready to sell. And we'd already kind of had the price worked out. And I said, deal. And then, that was, we're at 34 right now. And we're just, it's been life changing for us. And it has given us not only the ability to grow this really wonderful business with wonderful people who work with us and for us, but mostly with us. And also then, I'm an investor in the marketplace, and also in real estate now, because I sold all my first real estate business, and now I'm building another one, and a much bigger one, and much more focused on commercial and that kind of thing. So, but without this other income stream, none of these other things that are so important in our lives and so fun that we're growing would have been possible.
Couple questions. How long ago did you buy your first Subway?
9 years.
9 years. So when we reconnected, it was basically 9 years ago. So you had just bought it when I took this new job. But how long till you bought the second one?
Probably almost a year, just short of a year.
So almost 8 years ago, you bought the second one. How about the third one? You'll see where I'm going with this.
Exactly a year after that, actually. Exactly. By the time I actually took ownership of it, because it takes a little time.
So 7 years ago, you had 3 Subways.
Yep.
Then
I had 4, 6 years ago. I had 7 about 4.5 years ago. And 2 years ago, I had, I think, 11. And now we're at 34. And
that's
with the goal. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because this whole journey, the common theme is you haven't been afraid to work. You had some failure, but your work ethic and finding something stable in the franchising, finally, you had the system down. It takes a little bit of work, and then it starts compounding, just like a snowball, an investment, anything in life.
It does. But one thing that's so important to point out, Paul, is the difference of my lifestyle between having none and battling and having one didn't change at all. And 2 didn't change at all. 3 didn't change. And then maybe 4 or 5, then, actually it was 3 before my wife and I bought our first house together. We were living in an apartment. Other people would have been on 1 or 2, and all of a sudden, let's go get a house. Paul, up until 6 months ago, I was driving a 2012 Chevy Tahoe with 212,000 miles on it, with no air. My daughter loves this story. With no air, I drove that thing with no air conditioning for 3 summers. When I didn't even get rid of it. Still have it. When I got my new car, my daughter was so disappointed in me. She said, she goes, Dad, That's not you. You're the guy in the 2012 Tahoe with no air conditioning with the windows down because I put the what I did is I kept putting my money back into buying the more businesses. And I realized quickly when I was sacrificing all these what my dad used to call crap, which is cars and fancy clothes and all this consumer crap. It doesn't mean anything to you once you get used to
Right.
giving it up. And then all of a sudden you can afford it. And you're like, I don't care about this stuff. I don't care about what people think of me, whatever the logo, by the way, this thing I'm wearing right now, my wife can't stand it. If she saw it on her, she'd throw it. She's been trying to throw this away for years. I love it because it's comfortable. I don't care about any of that stuff. It doesn't mean a thing to me. I didn't start buying crap. I kept buying the assets, Paul, and you know this. You've heard me tell it a million times. You want to change your life. You want freedom. You want to give to your community, to your family, to your church, to whatever means something to you. Buy income producing assets. Don't come to me with your fancy cars and your fancy sneakers or your fancy watches or all the crap. You buy income producing assets. That's the answer. And it'll always be the answer.
And you left the world. I like to think what Carol Sanford told us a couple episodes. You left the world of work, all lowercase, and entered your world of work, capital W,
How do you?
because you're still working the same hours that you would have worked in the sports entertainment industry,
Oh
except
yeah. At times, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, at
you have,
times.
I
Not
mean,
always.
give or
Yeah.
take, you know what
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
but you have no ceiling now where you
Yeah.
had a ceiling. Yeah. And I'm guessing you know how I always tell guests, you're basically the guest today. Would you change anything different in your journey? I don't like asking that question anymore because I think your journey, you needed all those pieces of the puzzle along the way.
Yeah, I did, or it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be who I was. It wouldn't happen. Paul, if I was 28 with what I have right now in terms of the amount of assets and things like that, I wouldn't have been able to handle it. I don't think it would have been.
Right.
Some days I don't know if I can handle it today, and I'm not kidding. I mean, it's difficult. It comes with its trade offs, like everything. It is
Right.
not. It's not all gravy and success and all that kind of stuff and freedom. I mean, it has its challenges. Those challenges are way more worth it than the old ones used to be. For me, they are. But I love what Carol said. The work thing. God,
Yeah.
I love her. She just said so many things that I think about. But yeah, now the work is about what I want and what my is for my family. And like I make no secret of it. I'm not trying to put any more money in my pocket or any more freedom for me or it's about building for generations for me and that's what I get a kick out of and that's what I'm interested in helping people in ways that you don't know about, nobody else knows about. It's no one else's business
Right.
what my wife and I do, but trying to do those types of things that are important to us. But I couldn't have done it early on. I needed a lot of the lessons in a lot of the journey. But the reason I'm so vocal about it, Paul, and whether it's my classes or your classes or just people in general, whether it's out to dinner, whether it's wherever, is because I think people are sold such a line and so much garbage out there. There's so much, I hate the go to school, get good grades, go to a good college, get good grades, get a good job, work hard and that's the dream. I think that's that has some components of what could be your dream to it. It's got so many holes in it. I don't even I couldn't even I know where to start, but I'm not going to do it
Right.
at this podcast. But there's so much more out there. There's so much more opportunity out there. There's so much more freedom out there for people, and it saddens me to see what the path that so many people are on. And I hear from them all the time having a conversation now with someone about it. And it's usually so late in their journey, it's very difficult for them to get out of it. Nothing's impossible, but they
Right.
don't want to make the sacrifices anymore. And you have to make sacrifices. But that's why I'm so vocal about it, Paul, because it's there for people to attack and take. And I wish I'd known about it sooner.
Well, and that's why we like to have the guests we have on, because there's no one journey.
No,
But I'm going to sum up what you just talked about with me. I'm learning this is the plan when we have every guest on, that successful people at some point in their life find perspective in what they want to do. And you were fortunate or unfortunate at 24 to need that surgery. Sometimes the perspective comes much later to people.
sure.
An event where you can have perspective, big picture perspective, is really one of those triggers to change what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
And then you got into the sacrificing, the building wealth, the failures, the seasoning along the way that just
Yeah.
keeps getting sprinkled, sprinkled, sprinkled. Finally, start compounding a decade plus into your journey since your perspective, since that trigger, and you'll never stop because that's your why. That's your, as
I love
Carol
it.
says,
I
the
love it.
work with the capital W. We talk all the time. I have a hard time conversing with people that just talk retirement. Like, I don't understand it. So, well, what are you going to do next? I don't know. And 6 months later, they're always doing something. But you have a system in place where you'll always work, but there's the sky's the limit on what you could do. You don't have to retire from anything. You have your system.
Yeah, and it's allowed me to remove so many barriers from my life, especially in my mind, to
Right.
think I can do anything. Now, I can't do everything. I have
Right.
to choose what I want, but I can do it, and so can anyone else. And I love that. I love when I see that in people.
Yeah, I mean, the perspective, of course, you've always been pretty truthful with yourself. Your trade-offs now are much bigger than when you were starting. I mean, the trade-off in the beginning was time,
Time.
sacrifice, and
Yep.
to raise some money. Now your trade-offs are literally huge projects that could take you in different tangents and railroad, directions. But
Yeah.
it's still a trade. It's still all about choices, right?
It
And
is. None of us get
you
to escape that game.
no, and the work with the capital W, you have the meaning. I mean, you're hitting all four of these pillars. Hence, that's why we started the whole podcast, and
Yeah.
that's why
Well,
that's why we bring the people on. We bring on.
yeah, these things weren't any accident. I mean, these were all the, in terms of the pillars and such. In talking them with you and coming up, like those were the things that resonated in my life, and I'm like, you know, this is how the world works, and at least as far as I'm concerned, and
Right,
so it wasn't like someone else provided the pillars and like, okay, now let's fit a square peg in the round hole so I can tell a story. It's like, no, this is just what happened. This is what it's
right.
been. And I'm so tired of saddened by the number of people I talk to who don't don't have, don't tell themselves the truth, and they're living these lies, and mostly don't have any meaning in their lives. They're just chasing this date of retirement where they get to stop going to work, and I'm thinking, my God, one side of their mouth they're telling me how much they love it, and the next other side of their mouth, all I hear about is when they get to stop doing it. Now it doesn't add up to me, and so
Got a
there's
theory.
all these
I
things. Yeah,
The average person works, and it preoccupies them. They're on the hamster wheel, and it can create a great life. I'm not knocking it. I left the profession I left years ago. You switched gears and left your the sports entertainment industry as you knew it. But people retire and just are going through the motions, that they thought they had meaning, but they really just were preoccupied. The work was almost a distraction. So when you're done working, now you really have a vacuum in your life.
hmm
Like, you don't have that vacuum. I like to think I don't have it. So what's the point of just quitting your job or your career or your work with a capital W? Does that make sense?
yeah, no, it does, and that's why people look at me with like I have two heads when they say, where this was just the other day. I was talking to someone, and he goes, "Well, you'll have whatever when you retire," and I go, I'm making no plans on my life to retire. I have no intention of retiring. That's not. I mean, I'm 48, maybe who knows what life will throw at me. If I retire, Paul, it's because I have a health issue or
Right.
something else goes on. But my God, I'm 24 again in my mind, and I got one life to live here.
You're an example. I mean, I tell the kids most people work so they don't have to work someday. The most powerful, influential people with meaning in their life never stop working. Like, think of all the celebrities and business people and influential people in the world that are older. Like, they're well beyond retirement age, but there's a reason they keep doing what they do.
Yeah, isn't that
And
wonderful?
it's so
That you're
backwards.
doing that. Yeah.
All of them could stop working, yourself included. But very few people find that, like, make that connection. Well, why are they doing that? Well, we know why. You just told the story.
It's like in exchange for what? Like how many, and if you're, okay, I'm going to stop working, let's say. All right. And let's say I got enough money where I can just hang out on a beach or whatever, right? For the rest of
Right.
my life. Give me 2 weeks and like now, Paul, now what? I mean, I don't understand that mindset. Like I'd fish every day or I'd golf every day. I like to fish and golf more, but like I'm not doing it 8 to 10, 12 hours a day. I'm not building anything. Where's the meaning in that?
Right.
Where's the look, I got a responsibility in my daughters and in my future grandchildren to help build lessons into their lives and help provide wonderful potential experiences and opportunities for them. Like I just don't. I cannot wrap my head around. We'll just stop and ride off into the sunset. I cannot understand it. I mean, if there's a health reason, you have to, fine. But
Absolutely.
otherwise, I can't. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Well, hopefully our viewers got to learn a little more about Matt Hufnagel today in the story. I know we talk about it. I know you're an inspiration to me. I think of how I've grown in the 9 years since we reconnected. I mean, real quick,
We
we
both
grew
have.
up in this we grew up in the same neighborhood
Yeah,
together.
yeah, yeah.
And
Crazy.
I'm much the elder of you, 4 or 5 years, I think, 4 years.
I
But
think for real.
that's an eternity in high school. That's my
In high
point.
school, it is. Yeah,
And
yeah.
we went
Now
our
it's
separate we went
now
our
it's you.
separate ways. Yeah, and I called you to come speak with my class because I thought you were still the GM of a local arena. And
Yeah.
then boom, how the last 9 years have changed since then. I mean, that's why I'm proud. I mean, we're technically business partners, podcast partners, but most importantly, friends, and you're a huge mentor to me. So I would suggest to anybody to find people that you get excited to talk to and take advice from and learn from every day. Like there's no other secret. There's no golden pill. Just find your circle, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
So
talk, in our, Paul, our conversations and I appreciate what you said, but like that's a two-way street, like our
thank you.
conversations are inspiring to me and fun for me, and they're and see what you're doing with the difference between where you are now and when we met 9 years ago in terms of your professional life. I mean, you've always been a great dad and a great husband and a great, son and brother and those and neighbor even and those kinds of things. But then you've taken a turn of, oh, there's more to my future than just riding off in the sunset with my pension
Absolutely.
and all those kinds of things, and that would be really easy to do, I think, for most people, very easy to do. Instead, you're pushing yourself and doing some things that make you uncomfortable, and they should, because that's the journey, that's the fun. And I feel and know with the bottom of my heart you won't regret any of those decisions because of the person they make you become, not because
Right.
any figure or inconvenience they might cause you, because things cause you it calls all of us inconveniences. But you're a better version of yourself today than you were 9 years ago, Paul. And I bet you I could pick a lot of people I know who 9 years ago to today, they're not any different other than they're grayer or balder
Right.
or
Right.
or heavier or whatever it might be. They're just cruising along on the highway of life,
100%.
and they're just going straight. It's just, this is where I'm going. I'm going straight. Well, what's up ahead? I don't know. This is where I'm supposed. Somebody pointed me in this direction 25 years ago. This is the way I'm going, and that is just sadness to me. And you're not doing that. You've taken exits and spun around and taken other exits, and you're doing other things. And that's not, the older you get, the harder that becomes for a lot of people. Although I think it should
Right.
scare the crap out of people, but it doesn't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they're
Well,
just marching along, and you're not doing that. I can't tell you how much I admire that.
well, thank you. Yeah, this was fantastic. We'll sign off for now, and
Yep.
we could tackle any of the things you talked about in another episode sometime.
Yep.
But
More detail. There's obviously as long as it took to tell, and I apologize, but I could go. There's so many stories and so much nuance and all this stuff that I go on and on. Of course, for hours about it. But
right.
it's been a fun journey, and one I would not trade, despite the many failures that have taken place throughout it.
Well, I'm just glad we don't have to edit this podcast, because we would have had to cut half of it out because we went over.
Yeah.
I'm joking. Well worth it. I knew it would happen. I don't even
No, I
know why I
know.
set
Yeah,
a
me
date. All right, man. Until next week. I'm sure we'll talk before then, but have a good one.
I'm sure we will. See ya.
Bye.